Okay, calm down. You got rivers, man. You got rivers, man. Okay, calm down.
Katie, I think you're muted.
Oh, weird. I didn't touch that. Okay, thanks, Brad. Brad just wanted to come on the show, so he sabotaged me and muted me. Or maybe it was the Mossad, one of those two. Or maybe it was Bucky. Anyway, thank you, everyone, for coming to the Katie Halper Show. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. We have a wonderful show for you today. We have some old-time favorites, and we got some newbies, and you will love them all, I'm sure. Before we start, please do give this a thumbs up. That is a free way for you to support this show. And this show, of course, does not have corporate sponsors and does not suck up to the tech overlords. So we do get suppressed quite a bit. So it helps us if you like the show, if you subscribe. We're almost at 400,000 subscribers, which is great. Please do join the Patreon at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And if you join at $5 a month, you get access to extended interviews, early release, bonus interviews, behind the scenes stuff. For instance, this show, if you want to see all of it and you're not watching live, that will be at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. But of course, we always give you at least an hour of great show, even for people who don't subscribe to Patreon. If you can't pull off the $5 a month, and I know that times are hard, then you can join the show at the $1 a month level. So that's $12 a year. And that just lets you support the show, because we literally could not do this show without your support. Brad, people are asking which one they're supposed to watch. Can you come on and explain what's happening?
Well, recently, I guess they gave the ability to broadcast both horizontally and vertically. So for people that like to watch on their phone like that, but it's really up to you, the person who's watching it. There's no right or wrong answer. But my hope would be at some point they kind of tweak it and refine it a bit so that you don't have two separate things you have to pick between. It would be cool if there was just one broadcast and you could like toggle between them, because I understand how having two can be kind of confusing. But
yeah. I mean, do they know, is it clear how to actually select one and not the other? I think that maybe that's what they're asking.
Oh, I mean, for me, at least when I saw it, the horizontal one has the like thumbnail with Colonel Wilkerson on it. The vertical, at least when I was looking at it, has a picture of you.
Oh, interesting. So Andrew's also pointing out that one of the differences is that there's a cell phone emoji at the end. So if you go to my page, The Katie Halper Show, you'll see one has a cell phone emoji, one doesn't. So if you go to like youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show, you'll see one has a cell phone emoji, one doesn't. So you click on whichever one of those. And so, for instance, we have a lot more people watching on the regular one than on the cell phone one, which makes sense because more people probably watch the show live, I'm assuming, from a laptop versus a phone. And yeah, the difference is the laptop one is horizontal and the cell phone one is vertical. Okay,
which
streams at a time. YouTube does 2 streams at a time, yeah.
And which also, though, will be beneficial for us once you help us and subscribe on TikTok and Twitch, because then we can broadcast there, and that is just vertical. So.
Oh yeah, and please do subscribe to TikTok at tiktok.com/KTHelps_. Correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Great. Okay, awesome. So we are going to get this show on the road. Let's see, Brad, one of our guests coming on later says that something was sent that isn't. So you can just talk about that with them. I'm just creating some suspense. You see, not every show pulls back exposes the fourth wall, pulls back the curtain, but we certainly do. So you can just tell her that either we play the trailers that we have, or she can send clips or something. I'll let you guys work that out. Okay. So, all right, here we go. We are actually starting now. Enough of the, what's it called? Housekeeping. We are going to get this show on the road. We have some wonderful, wonderful guests. We're going to go in reverse order. So our final session, we have 3 different segments on the show tonight, which is so great. So our final segment is a chat with filmmakers JT Takagi and Tammy Gold. They're going to be talking about Third World Newsreel Cinema and this really cool anti-imperialist film festival that they have going on. Also, we're going to be talking to, before we speak to Junaid, so we speak to Tammy and JT, we're speaking to Junaid Ahmad about Imran Khan, why he's in jail, what they're doing to him, what the situation is in Pakistan, what the relationship is between Pakistan and Zionism. But our first guest, and I know you guys absolutely adore this guest, is Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who is a retired U.S. Army colonel, former Chief of Staff to United States Secretary of State Colin Powell, and he is an anti-war critic of U.S. foreign policy and a member of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, otherwise known as VIPs or VEEP. So welcome, Colonel.
Katie.
Hi, thank you so much for joining.
Good to be here. I'm frozen, but otherwise.
Oh, are you frozen? Let's see. Oh, you're not frozen to us.
No, I'm frozen like cold.
Oh, I see. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. Well, thank you for, hopefully this discussion will warm you up, because we'll be talking about stuff that's red hot, according to an interview that I saw you do earlier with Dialogue Works, Code Red, I guess. So before we get into a discussion that's going to be traveling from Ukraine to Venezuela to the White House, I want to just ask if you could kind of give an overview of what is happening right now. We'll start with Russia and Ukraine. Where are we in that conflict?
I think the best thing is to go into the ether level, because picking down at the tactical, the operational, the strategic even is a little bit ridiculous now. At the ether level, Russia has won, NATO has lost, but doesn't acknowledge it or want to admit it. The United States is backing away from the whole thing. We are picking over the bones of what is literally a dead Ukraine right now, we being Moscow and Washington, so that Donald Trump can reestablish a meaningful relationship with Russia. And everything else right now is roughly inconsequential, except to the people who are actually doing it. And one of the new things I discovered is that Starmer, Merz, and Macron, others too probably, but these 3, the leading powers in Europe. Now, I didn't say NATO because Turkey is in NATO too, but that's not one of the powers I wish to refer to when I say NATO, because I think they're going to leave and unanchor the southern flank of NATO when they do so. Be a disaster, but for NATO. But what they're doing, I think, is what this particular paper that just came out from one of the lords in the House in Britain, that essentially says what Merz, Starmer, and Macron are trying to do is use the 5% that they are now asking of their people to donate to defense to rebuild their economies, because their economies are collapsing, particularly Germany's. And yesterday we learned that the CEO of Rheinmetall, which is a very, very resplendent name in the history of German armament, all the way back to you-know-who, that it is leading the fray in this and has aspirations to even equal or surpass Lockheed Martin, the leading death merchant in the world. All to say, it's over. The Europeans don't know how to admit it's over, and they are going to use this threat and milk it as much as they possibly can, because that's the only way they can explain to their restive publics, whose economies are collapsing all around them, as to why they're giving even more money to defense. And they need a threat, and they need a viable, big bugaboo threat in their face. They're making Russia that threat. EU's helping them so that they can get this money. And
describe this threat that you're speaking of.
Well, the threat they're saying is that Russia's going to attack NATO. It's going to attack them. It's going to attack Poland tomorrow, Estonia next week. It's going to attack the whole alliance, which Putin has been very careful, as has his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, in denouncing. He does not want a war with NATO. He knows where a war with NATO would lead. It would lead to nuclear weapons. So he doesn't want it. All he wants is for them to quit funding Ukraine's war and quit supporting them altogether so that the war can come to an end. And when Donald Trump gets up and says they're still killing people, or Macron or Merz or Storm or any of those do that, yes, Russia has no choice but to keep killing people because you won't stop the war, people. A war you started. You started. I started a special military operation. That's a very important term to remember. He doesn't consider it a war. He started the SMO in order to prevent the United States and, to a lesser extent, NATO, from putting armaments in eastern Ukraine and making it the bulwark of their opposition to Russia close to their borders, in their near abroad. Look at what he's done. In order to pay us back in our own coin, he sent Admiral Gorshkov, a Kirov-class cruiser, and a nuclear-powered submarine to Havana in 2024. That negated the Monroe Doctrine. Now he's supporting Venezuela, significantly supporting Venezuela. That's a further refutation of the Monroe Doctrine. But what Putin is doing is saying, you did it in my near abroad. Watch how you like it when I do it in your near abroad. So look for more Russian subs, more Russian jets, more Russian ships, more Russian missiles going to Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela in the future, because he's going to pay us back in our own coin.
So can you clarify or just very briefly go over what the Monroe Doctrine is for people who don't know, and also what the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is?
Well, it was really a ridiculous pronouncement to Europe, whose empires, fledgling or dying that they were messing around in the Western Hemisphere, that they shouldn't do that. It's our domain. Do not come into the Western Hemisphere, especially do not come into the Caribbean. Do not come anywhere near it, because that's our domain. Did we enforce it religiously? From time to time, people did. I mean, the most glaring one was when Khrushchev came into Cuba and tried to put nuclear-tipped missiles in Cuba. Right. There was the Monroe corollary to the doctrine, and then there was a Reagan statement about the doctrine that was fairly forceful. But it's a big ocean. It's a big several oceans. And so it's almost impossible to enforce, but it was reasonably accepted by Europe in particular, and by the other, at the time, empires in the world. So that was sacrosanct for us. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense now, but if it's the Gulf of America, maybe it makes some sense. It's not enforceable. It simply is not enforceable, and Putin's proving it. And the exchange is very, very interesting to understand, because what Putin told us essentially in 2014, well, actually in 2005, when I was still at the State Department, and what Lavrov told Powell, what others told Powell, what Putin wound up telling everybody that he could get to listen, was that Ukraine represented a threat to the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the most important power of which is Russia. It's NATO equivalent, if you will. And Ukraine was the last stop. I mean, we were expanding NATO right up to Russia's border. And he said, stop, stop, stop. Several times he said, stop. Well, Ukraine was it. He was not going to take Ukraine with U.S. forces in the eastern portion of Ukraine that could hit Moscow with nuclear weapons. He wasn't going to take U.S. forces there, period. And if it were a member of NATO, it would have U.S. forces there. And no one paid any attention to it. Angela Merkel actually said, you know what we did in 2014 with the Minsk agreement? We actually lied.
Right.
She didn't use the lie word, but she said we were gaining time for Ukraine to get stronger and more powerful, and to be able to take Russia on and to threaten Russia. And Putin said enough when he launched the special military operation. And he's been pursuing it ever since, with some bludgeoning unease and not too much tactical prowess in the beginning. But he's battle hardened now. His army is battle hardened. His defense industrial base is doing fine. Thank you very much. Second only probably to China's. China's is number one. Russia's is number two. Notice I didn't put the United States in there. And we're at a point now where a self-fulfilling prophecy on the part of the Europeans about Putin being willing to take on NATO could blossom, because war has a dynamic all of its own. And it'll pick up and pick up, and Putin has to push his way all the way to the western borders of Ukraine, to the Polish border and so forth, then that's a different dynamic. You've created your own Hitler, if you will. You've let him do what he did, and you've whetted his appetite, and you've battle hardened his forces. That's really stupid. But as I said, what they're doing it for, I think this Lord is right. Skidelsky's his name. I think they're doing it because they know their economies are collapsing, especially Germany's, and they see the only way to rebuild them is through defense spending. And Rheinmetall is leading the march in Germany. This is dangerous. This is extremely dangerous because we're talking about maybe going back to a Germany that none of us will like very much.
Wow. So this is the article that you're talking about, and this, just so that people can see it, and here it is. Here are these European leaders, and so his thesis is what exactly?
It is that because their economies are collapsing, and Germany's most formidably of all, and Merz doesn't know what to do about it, they have this threat out there that they can magnify. And Trump has already helped them magnify it by saying you got to go to 5%, and they can go to 5%. And then that money spent in their economy will reinvigorate their economy. That's exactly what Hitler did. Wow. If you remember, Hitler was even during the years when he didn't want anybody to know what he was doing, he was actually building battalions, building brigades, building divisions in the Soviet Union. He was using facilities in the Soviet Union to train his troops and his units outside the confines of the agreements at Versailles. So Germany rebuilt a lot of its war machine in Russia.
So, but do you think that there's any kind of comparable ideology, genocidal ideology, or expansionism that we could see? Because, the irony is that, and I'm sure you are critical of this, people love to compare Putin to Hitler, which is totally ahistorical, which, as you can explain. But what are the, how far can you take this parallel between what's happening now and what happened with Hitler?
Well, we've seen a very vivid representation of a similarity between Spain and the Civil War there, where Hitler tested everything, and Ukraine.
Like Guernica.
Where essentially the French, the Germans, and the British are talking about testing everything for fighting Russia.
Right.
And that's really what they were supporting Ukraine for in the first place. They thought,
a proxy war again.
They thought through that proxy war they could bleed Russia and really probably bring Putin down. That's what they thought. That was their initial strategic thought. But that's not happened. In fact, they've magnified him, made him stronger, made him more powerful, made Russia more powerful, and most foreboding of all, forced him in a tacit alliance with the number one economy in the world, China.
Right.
And let's just pause there for a second. There is no argument in any real economist's mind today that China is the number one economy in the world. Not America, China. So we pushed them together, and just to make it really testy, we invited India to join. So now you get these three huge powers out there, two of them probably as powerful as anybody else in the world, particularly 6,000 nuclear warheads in Moscow, and they're together. This is utter strategic insanity, and the Europeans and NATO and America have done it.
So one of the things that you said, and this relates to what we're talking about with China, is that even what Donald Trump is doing in Venezuela is actually China policy disguised as Monroe Doctrine. So it's for the domestic audience, as you said during an interview. He's telling the domestic audience that this is about, U.S. power and dominating basically our backyard or front yard, depending on whether you're a Trumpite or a Bidenist. But really, this is about China. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's so much about it that it's got enormous three-dimensional capacity to it. First of all, there's 300 billion barrels of oil in Venezuela, proven reserves. That's necessary for us to get our hands on, at least nominally, if not actually. And Trump seems to be bent on actually getting his hands on it in order to offset this very dangerous move in the world right now, that 60% of the world is aiming its instincts at, and that is to denominate oil sales globally in other than the dollar. That will send our debt through the roof. Our credit rating will go through the floor, and we will be very, very hard pressed, if it's even possible, to pay the $1 to $2 trillion interest payments on our annual debt. So that's the first thing. He wants to get that 300 billion, because then that gives him enough assets to counter this with, possibly. The second thing he wants to do is, as you were saying, China is doing more trade with every nation in South America than the United States of America. China is dominating trade in South America. So you're right. He wants to force China, however he has to do it, out of South America, not just Venezuela, but also Ecuador, Uruguay, the other countries in South America. Principally now, I think Brazil. Marco Rubio has got his laser eye, which is only a Latin American eye. He's not doing anything else. He doesn't go to Russia. He doesn't go to Israel. He is the anti-South America guy in the administration, and he's well equipped for it because he hates it. He hates the whole place. He hates Cuba all the way down to the tip of Tierra del Fuego. He wants it all to go to the United States. So he's got that, and he's been down there trying to talk to South American leaders who are what you might call rightist. I mean, in the lexicon of South American leaders, they're not looking for socialism. They're as in Buenos Aires, they're willing to deal with the World Bank. They're willing to deal with the FMF and so forth. He's down there trying to talk them into getting rid of Lula. He made a journey down to South America just to try to talk people into getting rid of Lula. When he went to Ecuador, he thought he had a good guy there, a rightist by the definition. And the Ecuadorian people had just voted on something that he had said he would do, allow U.S. troops on his soil. He held a referendum, and the Ecuadorian people voted, I think, by 63% not to allow it to happen. So he's run into a buzzsaw down there. And he's going to continue to run into a buzzsaw because China does a better job of recruiting these countries economically than we do. We want to do the old U.S. technique, go in, ally ourselves with the 5% of the richest people and screw the other 95%. Right. We got what we want. They got what they want. Everything's copacetic. No, China goes in. I'm not trying to say China is not a little bit on the negative side sometimes, but basically they go in for money reasons. And they go in and they do things for people. They build homes, they build roads, they build trains. Oh, by the way, they work too. Not always the case with us. And so they have captured the South American economic market. They really captured Brazil. Why did they capture Brazil so incredibly fast? Because Trump turned soybeans over to Brazil. He put tariffs on China to the point where, China wouldn't buy our soybeans anymore, and had to bail our farmers out to the tune of 12 billion, which is minuscule. They need probably 50 or 60 billion because of what he did. All the soybeans going to China are now coming from Brazil, or most of them are. And then the third reason is because Trump wants this strategy he's got to focus for domestic political reasons. This is what he told MAGA, on the Western Hemisphere, on the domestic safety and security of America. That goes along with his domestic idea of putting troops in all the cities and everything too. What he's really doing, he's backing up, retrenching, divesting himself for the most part from Europe, which is what's scaring them to death. And he's saying, I'm doing this in the strategy. I'm doing this so I can husband my strength and then attack China. That's what he's saying. The focus is still on China in that strategy. It's just on it in an indirect fashion. And I'm sure Trump, were he here with us and he could speak intelligibly, he would say, well, yeah, but what I really want is to beat them economically. But I got to be in a good position to beat them militarily before Xi Jinping will let me work with him on an equal basis economically. But we're looking for war with China. That's what that strategy says ultimately. We're husbanding our resources so we can go to war with China.
And what happens if we go to war with China?
We get beat. We get beaten badly. And here's the scenario. I've played this war game a number of times. The scenario is we go to war over Taiwan, over the South China Sea, over attacks on the Philippines, whatever the reason is, we go to war. And we attrit each other, Air Force and Navy, about a third to a half. In other words, we shoot down about half of China's Air Force, sink about half of their Navy, and they do the same to us. And then you're sitting there looking at each other, heavily attrited, many casualties. One aircraft carrier is 5,000 dead Americans. They'll take 3 or 4 aircraft carriers. And we're sitting there looking, and we can't go ashore because only a fool would go into 12 million men mobilized on a landmass like China with what we have. And they can't come out and get us because their fleet's been attrited, their Air Force has been attrited, and all they can do probably is defend the South China Sea. So what do? I've been there. The war games go like this. Let's nuke Shanghai, then they'll get the message. Let's nuke Beijing, then they'll really get the message. And on the red team side, they're saying, well, let's nuke that Navy out there just beyond the -9 line. Or let's nuke Japan, or let's nuke the Philippines or South Korea or whatever. And then the civilian leaders of the games, whether you're doing it at Naval War College or wherever, say, no, we're not going there. But that's where you come down to in a conventional fight. And what scares me, really scares me, is the American people haven't seen these kind of headlines above the fold right side of the Washington Post or the New York Times in their lives. In generations, we haven't seen these headlines. It's going to be 10,000 Americans killed on Monday, 20,000 killed on Tuesday, 8,000 killed on Wednesday. Those are going to be the casualty figures that flow in from this war with China.
Wow. Well, that's kind of a scary prospect. What should Trump be doing? If you were advising Donald Trump, what would you tell him to do?
Step down.
Can you expand on this?
Immediately step down and take your vice president with you. That isn't going to work. Although Congressman Green has, I understand, started impeachment proceedings in the House again.
Right.
Won't go anywhere probably.
And we got to have you back on because we just scratched the surface, and you are just such a resource and such a pleasure and such an educational person to be speaking to about so many different issues. But you actually wanted to speak about something that is, I guess, also personal for you because you knew Rob Reiner, the director, actor. One of my favorite films is This is Spinal Tap. So brilliant, hilarious. He, as people probably know, really tragically, he and his wife were murdered, it looks like, by their son. And not surprisingly, Donald Trump managed to say something disgusting even about the murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, and they were killed in their home in Brentwood, LA. So let's take a look at what Donald Trump said in response on Truth Social to the murder of Rob Reiner and Michelle. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace.
That's despicable. It's disgusting. I don't know if you saw the same, not the same, but a similar timed statement after Charlie Kirk's assassination that Rob Reiner issued.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Totally different.
Yeah.
And he wound up saying what he should have said explicitly and did say explicitly at the end, that this is not the way we should be settling our differences, period, by assassinating people. And otherwise, his comments were, I had differences with Charlie Kirk, but I respected his right to do what he was doing and to maneuver the young people the way he did and put the MAGA. He really was probably the most effective instrument in making MAGA successful.
Wow.
And Reiner had every reason
Right.
in the world, given his point of view and his beliefs, to go after Charlie Kirk, but not after he'd been assassinated. And he didn't. He gave a very moving statement about Charlie Kirk. So what does Trump do when Reiner is brutally murdered? He comes out and gives a statement like that. This is just another indication of how crass, how inhuman, how indelicate, how incapable, how clownish, how buffoonish this individual is. Someone told me this morning that they finally saw the last thing they thought they'd ever see in the world. It was at a coffee shop. Trump was hawking, I can't remember what it was, but he was hawking something that he never thought he would hawk. His picture was showing up on television, and he was actually shilling for this product he was selling. And I said, he's doing orange juice, he's doing hot dogs, he's doing creature, things like Doritos, things. He's doing everything like that. All across the globe, he's doing this. And this guy showed me this one. I wish I could remember what it was, but it was some insignificant little thing, and Donald Trump was hawking it.
Wow.
As president.
Yeah, there really is no low. That's too low for him. And how did you know Rob Reiner, by the way?
It was a very interesting moment. I don't know if you remember Joe Galloway. Joe Galloway was the one who made We Were Soldiers Once and Young, the movie, Mel Gibson. And
Yeah.
And he was the one who wrote the book, even more importantly than that, We Were Soldiers Once and Young. In Vietnam, he was at the Ashaw Valley, the very bloody battle in 1964-5, as I recall. And Joe was the only journalist, I think, in the history of the U.S. military to be awarded the Bronze Star for valor because of what he did at that battle. Well, Joe was an icon in the military. Joe says to me one night, he says, "You want to see this movie Rob Reiner's making?" I said, "What movie?" He said, "It's got you in it." "I'm in it?" "Yeah, you're in it. It's the movie about how we went to war in Iraq in 2003. It's called Shock and Awe." I didn't even know it was being made. He said, "Yeah, we're going to see the pre-final edit cut, and we're going to do it in a theater downtown in Washington, D.C. So I said, "Yeah," grab my wife. We go down there. Chief of Staff of the Army, Ken Shinseki, is there, me, my wife, and Joe Galloway, and Rob Reiner and his wife. And we're watching this movie, and the whole time we're talking. So I'm sitting in a theater with Rob Reiner and Joe Galloway and Ken Shinseki, and we're talking the whole time we're watching this movie. And there I am on the screen. I mean, the guy that was playing me, because I was the guy who took all the information and gave it to Joe so he could get it printed in Knight Ridder about the Iraq War. I was trying to stop the damn war. And they picked an old actor who was bald-headed and everything.
Yeah, what remind me the name of the film?
I told Reiner, Shock and Awe. I told Reiner, I said, "You should have got a better looking guy to play me." But anyway, we talked afterwards to the wee hours, and I was very impressed with the guy. He had his head screwed on right. He does it. The Princess Bride was one of my favorite movies. I told him, I said, that statement about everybody knows you don't start a land war in Asia. I said, that was terrific. Anyway, I didn't know him for long, but I knew him in a very intense moment watching the war portrayed in the terms it should have been portrayed in. Because you may not remember this, or maybe most Americans don't even know it today, but Knight Ridder got it right. Knight Ridder group of papers got it right. They essentially, except for the one in Philadelphia, which became a real bone with the John Walcott, the editor down in D.C., they got it right. They Landay and Walt Strobel, the two reporters, they got it right. They knew Ahmad Chalabi was lying. They printed it in the press. They said the war was a intelligence fiasco. They got it right. And when I was working with Joe, I was going down to K Street in Washington to the Thai Kingdom restaurant where we knew the owner. And we'd sit down there every night, and I'd tell Joe everything I knew that was a lie. And Joe would go take it back to the UPI guys.
Wow.
Knight Ridder guys.
Wow. Well, we
didn't do any good, but
right. Well, we'll have to have you back on to talk about this more and the Iraq War and also Al Qaeda and 9/11. But we do have video of Carl Reiner Carl was his father, of Rob Reiner responding to Charlie Kirk's killing. So let's take a look at that. And this was on Piers Morgan.
First heard about the murder of Charlie Kirk. What was your immediate gut reaction to it?
Well, horror, absolute horror. And I unfortunately saw the video of it, and it's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving problems. And I felt like what his wife said at the service, that the memorial they had, was exactly right. And totally, I believe, I'm Jewish, but I believe in the teachings of Jesus, and I believe in doing to others, and I believe in forgiveness. And what she said to me was beautiful, and absolutely, she forgave his assassin, and I think that is admirable.
Okay, so quite the contrast between what he said and what Donald Trump said about him. And I see some people in the comments who are criticizing Rob Reiner's politics. And he said some things that I disagree with, but I would never in a million years talk about him the way that Donald Trump did. And I think that the way he responded actually to Charlie Kirk is totally appropriate. But what's scary is it's not just Donald Trump who's responding this way. Let's take a look at what happened on Megyn Kelly's show.
Let me just say one thing
please,
before you show it. I'm sitting in the theater, a Vietnam veteran. Joe Galloway is a decorated journalist who's risked his life for 3-4 straight days in the jungles of the A Shau Valley in Vietnam. And we're with Rob Reiner. And we had no problem with him. Would I disagree with some of his political views? Probably. I don't know anybody in the world I wouldn't, probably in some ways. But that's not a reason to sit down and not sit down and talk about fundamental issues like Reiner just did there. This is not a way to settle our differences, shooting each other. Now, there are a lot of Americans who would disagree with that. I know some of them. That's the reason I possess a gun. And that's the reason it's by my bedside and loaded every night. My 81 years on this earth have taught me there are a lot of crazy people in America.
Wow. Wow, 81. You look very young.
I don't feel it.
Oh, okay. Well, I also wanted to show, actually, I'm not a big Biden fan or Kamala Harris fan, to put it mildly, but here's another way you can respond to the killing of someone whose politics you don't like. So let's take a look at how Biden and Harris responded to Charlie Kirk's killing. There is no place in our country for this kind of violence. It must end now. Jill and I are praying for Charlie Kirk's family and loved ones. And then Kamala, I'm deeply disturbed by the shooting in Utah. Doug and I send our prayers to Charlie Kirk and his family. Let me be clear, political violence has no place in America. I condemn this act, and we must all work together to ensure this does not lead to more violence. And I'm just showing this also because, I think that language and discourse is a place where Trump really is a departure. I say this a lot, that I think that sometimes people exaggerate how much of an aberration Trump is, but this is a place where he is an aberration and also abhorrent. And I think that, the idea that there's political violence on both sides, that's just not true. There really is not the embrace of political violence on the left the way that there is on the right, I would say.
My father was a lifelong Republican. He lived to 92. And my father would say to me from time to time, reminding me, Larry, the left will bankrupt you, but the right will kill you. Wow.
That's a great line. I wish they'd bankrupt the wealthy more than they are, but wow, that's great. That's a perfect summation. Well, thank you so much, Colonel. And please come back, and would love to talk to you about so many of the things that we just didn't have time to talk about, because you are just a font of information and great anecdotes and analysis.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Talk soon. That was wonderful. I could talk to Colonel Wilkerson for days on end. So luckily for him, I have another guest booked, or else I'd be talking his ear off. And luckily for you, I have another guest booked, because you guys are going to love hearing from this person who is making his Katie Halper Show debut. So real pivotal moment, watershed moment for him. Junaid Ahmad teaches law, religion, and global politics and is the director of the Center for the Study of Islam and Decolonization in Islamabad, Pakistan. He's a member of the International Movement for a Just World and the Movement for Liberation from Nakba and Saving Humanity and Planet Earth. So welcome, Junaid.
Katie, it's such a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. Are you on your laptop or cell phone?
Cell phone.
Okay. Were we able to do a horizontal thing? We'll cut this out if you're not able to.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to do
All
that.
right.
So
Okay.
I hope this is okay.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, welcome to the show. We will let you stay on despite the fact that you are vertical and not horizontal, because we're really big people. But wanted to talk to you about Pakistan. You're someone who's written so much on this issue, and we had we did an episode on this a few weeks ago, which people really enjoyed. But I want to have you on because I think your political analysis is going to be a little bit different. And again, I really enjoyed talking to Dr. Moeed Pirzada, and people should definitely check out that interview. But tell us what your view of Pakistan is. Why? And then we're going to get into this UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Alice Jill Edwards, and what she said, because there's some breaking news. But why is Imran Khan, the former prime minister of Pakistan, the threat that he is? Why is he in jail as we speak?
Well, Katie, I've said that Imran Khan himself didn't know that he would land in this position when his party came to power first in 2018, 2019. And of course, after the regime change operation, Washington-backed military orchestrated against Imran Khan in April 2022, he really, at that stage, and people correctly say, he was very much, cooperating with the generals. His main kind of rhetorical position was against the corruption of the political parties, the family dynasties, which was, of course, wildly popular in the population. And I think that this is one of the things that we often miss. It's that not that there haven't been military dictatorships, there haven't been military coups, but the fact that in the past these were not accompanied by mass demonstrations and movements defending and the existing prime minister who was ousted. Because for ordinary Pakistanis, it virtually meant the same thing. They did not see any difference between military rule and civilian rule. And the military was always able to sell itself as the more disciplined, as the more honest, meritocratic institution versus these corrupt politicians. Now, of course, I'm not saying that that was true, but for ordinary Pakistanis, it became true. And I think that what has happened with Khan is that he, in some ways, very naively, believed this kind of discourse and narrative that during the war on terror years, in which Khan became very popular as kind of the very principled position that of course many of us shared, that is that the war itself was profoundly immoral with lots of collateral damage in terms of deaths and killings from drone operations and military operations that displaced many, and secondly that it was counterproductive. It was fueling more militancy. He was proved right on both grounds. And so he mistakenly believed that these generals that had also rhetorically opposed the United States and what they're doing in drone attacks, even though in private, no, that wasn't the case. And in fact, the military operations were conducted at the behest of Washington. So he really believed that, okay, well, these guys may be on the same page. He's a classic example, and I think people miss this point, of someone learning on the job, right? I mean, Khan comes in, and we say that often, that there's a lack of ideology there, and I think in some ways that's been the strength. So Khan has been obviously targeted and in jail for the past more than 2 years, while the movement itself is developing, growing, developing far more radical positions, I would argue, than maybe Khan himself had. I mean, maybe now he's seeing the system for all its brutality in terms of this authoritarianism and rising military dictatorship. But I think that he didn't know this before. He didn't know the extent of it before. And what he has done, and I think that this gets to the heart of your question, why is he being targeted so viciously? right? I mean, we really don't have a recollection. While the obvious, there's truth to that. The statements that, of course, military dictatorships have occurred in the past, coups have happened, prime ministers have been imprisoned, although most of them take the exit route that the military offers them and they go to Saudi Arabia, UK, and so on. What has happened with Khan and his movement for justice is they have challenged two principal support bases of the military. One is the whole nationalist narrative that the military has sold, very kind of a militarized approach to like Pakistan against India, Pakistan against this, and so on and so forth. Where Khan has captured the nationalist narrative in a very different way, far more in terms of national cohesion. This is the other thing. It's the first, I think, arguably the national party in Pakistan's history. So you've had political parties, you continue, that have been primarily provincially based, whether it's in the province of Punjab or Sindh. Khan's party, argues the Movement for Justice, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, arguably has, I mean, not arguably, it does have mass support in all of the provinces, right? And especially those provinces that have always been marginalized by the dominant province of Punjab. So that's the one thing, that it is a national party and it represents a serious threat to the monopoly on that nationalist narrative of the military. But the second reason, and it's kind of related to that, in which the generals have just been absolutely irate and enraged, and you see this obviously in their behavior, is the fact that in this dominant province of Punjab, from where historically, from colonial times, the bulk of the recruitment in the military has taken place, they've always been expected, the Punjabis, to love or at least respect the military. That has changed completely. Right? I mean, the people in Punjab are now disgusted. Now, again, this has always been more or less the case in the other provinces, especially in Balochistan and, of course, in also the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the Pashtuns, which have been obviously the principal victims of the war on terror. But within Punjab, this happening, I mean, that's the base of the military. So I think that's one of the reasons why you see them punishing Khan in such a way, because clearly these are such huge, monumental transformations in Pakistan.
Sorry, my dog Bucky got excited. I know, Bucky, it's really messed up. It's really problematic. So in terms of breaking news about Khan, there was actually a report that came out, today. A few days ago. A report that the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Alice Jill Edwards, urged the government of Pakistan to take immediate and effective action to address reports of inhumane and undignified detention conditions of former Prime Minister Imran Khan, warning that they could amount to torture. And then we actually have a recent interview with Imran Khan's two sons where they talked about the horrible conditions. Let's take a look at this interview, which was on Sky News.
Been shot 3 times in the past few years. He, as well as that, I mean, I said that the water's filthy, the food's nowhere near up to scratch. The only doctors he sees are these kind of military doctors. He's not able to see personal physicians or anything like that. And then also, yeah, what I said about daylight. I mean, he's inside a cell for 23 hours. I think he gets max an hour, if that. I think he was getting around 20 minutes recently. So the conditions are awful. They're not bad. They're awful. It's
Yeah, it's been described as a death cell, the cell that he's in, because I think inmates who have been put on death row have been put in these small cells before with barely any light. Sometimes the electricity's been cut off. Dirty water, as Carson was saying, and just completely substandard conditions that don't meet international law for any sort of prisoner.
So what went through your minds when you saw the images of him that were circulating on social media that perhaps he'd died or he'd been killed? There were all sorts of rumours swirling because, of course, there was no family contact, even though every Tuesday family members, based on the court, are supposed to see him and make contact with him, and they hadn't for several weeks.
Yeah, incredibly stressful, obviously. Yeah, I went straight onto kind of my family group chat because that's the only reliable source that we have on the ground in Pakistan, but even they couldn't really answer us because they tried to reassure us by saying I'm sure they won't touch him, but they couldn't confirm anything because no one was allowed to see him for the whole month of November. So it was only a couple of weeks ago that one of my aunts was allowed to go and see him, and then since then it's been this almost official isolation that's been announced. So,
and I mean, for us, it's like I always say, like, we kind of compartmentalize quite effectively because you have to do that if you can't constantly think that your father's in a solitary confinement cell getting tortured. But I remember it's just you go on Twitter and suddenly you see just Imran Khan dead, his body being transferred to this. It's like it's obviously very jarring and it obviously pulls you out of whatever you're trying to do in your normal life, especially how helpless we are over here, not able to do much at all. So it's not ideal.
So how is this story being covered, both in Western media and in Pakistan? I mean, this is not something you hear a lot about.
Right, Katie. I mean, I think that obviously what the Sons have articulated, and now this, as you mentioned, there's the UN Special Rapporteur and her report, which basically says that this type of inhumane treatment of Khan is almost verging on torture. This is saying what I think everybody knew, whether they articulated it publicly or not. So I think that obviously it's taken much more of clearly an emotional toll on obviously the family, but also all these supporters of Imran Khan. And especially when this was the statement they made before this interview, the demand for proof of life, as they were saying, the more than a month in which he was in solitary confinement, no one saw him. I think you've covered this in terms of his sisters protesting and having a peaceful sit-in outside of his jail and being assaulted by the military, and finally after weeks, one of the sisters allowed to meet with him briefly. So that proof of life statement really was the kind of instigating factor in the most recent uproar and the kind of the movement developing even in a more radical direction in terms of the anti-regime sentiment. And so, again, what they're saying is something that we all knew, but it's just reached a level now, Katie. It's like even the last sections of Pakistanis that were in kind of denial, or they can't do it anymore. And so now what this has done, and of course this is the larger argument, is that his imprisonment, Khan's imprisonment, has made this guy into a living martyr, has made him into a legend. And the one, the two things that strike me with these sons. Now, it should be remembered, like these are from one of the wealthiest families in the UK. His ex-wife Jemima Khan, who, by the way, has been incredibly supportive of his political positions. We had hosted her a long time ago when she was also speaking about against drone attacks, very much supportive of Khan's politics. And of course, you see it continued now. So his ex-wife Jemima Goldsmith comes from a very, very wealthy and influential family in the United Kingdom. And so one just thinks that, wow, if these guys are so afraid and helpless, that tells you something. And the second thing, I think they have emphasized this as well, that, as much as they would want Khan to make some type of deal, some type of compromise so he can be released from these wretched conditions, maybe come to the United Kingdom and be with them, they have refused. As much as they wanted to, they say that our father would live this life of being incredibly depressed till his end. And so we don't want to they haven't gone to Pakistan, not of fear of imprisonment, but that they would be used to break Khan.
Right.
And so I think that, these are just like kind of reminders to Pakistanis all over the world how much this guy is being targeted and what he represents in terms of radical now break with the standard conventional politics in Pakistan.
And also, can you talk about his kind of radical politics? I know he's again, it's not radical in terms of its support, but it's radical for people in power to talk about this. But he basically has a Medicare for all program, right? No one sleeps hungry program, housing for the poor.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Katie, and again, I want to be very careful here. While I think that no one denies that this were his aspirations, whether he was able to actually fulfill these promises while he was in governance, I mean, that's a mixed story, and I think that there's legitimate criticism to be had on that front. However, there's no question that in comparison to the rest of the lot in Pakistan, I think this is the fundamental question to ask. When people say in 2018, 2019, Khan came to power with the support, as always, every politician, with the support of the military. That's true. But you need to ask these people, if there were a one-person presidential election in Pakistan, everyone acknowledges he would win hands down, right? And so we are stuck in this parliamentary system in which he has to get all of these horrible characters as part of his political party, right, to kind of win in the parliamentary process. But so, I mean, he, from the beginning, like I said, he's clearly someone that's learned on the job, specifically in terms of domestic policy. Now, on terms of foreign policy, as I emphasized, this guy, you can't say that this was just, he's a rhetorical, someone who is just rhetorically took these positions. No, I mean, during the War on Terror years, this was a guy going to these tribal areas and the Pashtun where no journalists would go. Activists from the US and the West would go, Medea Benjamin and others would go and join him on these protests against drones. And so that was not just rhetorical. We have to understand, particularly, and I think that often liberals and progressives who have otherwise been in solidarity throughout the War on Terror years with the principal victims, the Pashtuns in the northwest of the population, all of a sudden, kind of after it was clear that Khan is immensely popular, in that they kind of, forget that there's reasons for this. That guy was, 20 years involved in solidarity with these victims in the Pashtun areas. So I think that, there's teeth to what he has been saying for a while in terms of his own activism. And I think that on the domestic policy front, again, he may have just come on this broad agenda of social justice, and as you were saying, what he often himself would say, the kind of the welfare state of Medina, of the initial, and he would often say, oh, the Scandinavian model and so on. And again, like in the Pakistani context, this is quite radical and revolutionary. I think people need to really understand that. Like, we have a left tradition, progressive tradition in the past. It's not at its high point now. So I think that in that context, he came on this rhetoric, and like I said, I think what people often say is the weakness, and they're very critical of the lack of a coherent or rigid ideology, as I think in some ways proved to be the strength of the movement, that they are constantly defining and redefining the directions in which it goes. And there are contradictions in the movement. There are different factions within the movement. But, that's the nature of these types of things.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to have Imran Khan's sister on my show, Alima Khanum, on Thursday. So everyone tune in. We're doing a special live stream Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Because it's much later in Pakistan, obviously, so we have to make it a little earlier, but that should be really fascinating. So I want to ask you, Junaid, about a kind of embarrassing moment.
Which one?
Yeah, I know which one exactly. Yeah. So in October, Pakistan's prime minister nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Pretty ironic, but also pretty telling.
By the way, this was after the Nobel Peace Prize was already awarded.
That's so embarrassing. I mean, that's really pathetic. So I guess it was safe to do it because it wasn't going to happen, right? So it's just purely symbolic, just cucking for Trump. I
think it's more than symbolic. I think they would genuinely want Trump to win it.
I'm sure. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's been, I mean, it's pretty cringeworthy, the sycophancy of Pakistan's prime minister. Shehbaz Sharif. Let's take a look at this really fascinating interaction.
And today, again, I would like to nominate this great president for Nobel Peace Prize, because I genuinely feel that he is the most genuine and most wonderful candidate for Peace Prize, because he has brought not only peace in South Asia, saved millions of people their lives. And today, here in Sharm el-Sheikh, achieving peace in Gaza is saving millions of lives in the Middle East. Mr. President, I would like to salute you for your exemplary leadership, visionary leadership. And I think that you're the man this world needed most at this point in time. World would always remember you.
I liked it when I thought he was saying you the man, but he was saying you the
Katie,
man.
why are you embarrassing our country?
I know. I'm sorry. Well, it's okay. We're even because look who was telling that to.
Right.
But so talk to us about this relationship, this sycophancy, and also Pakistan's view of Gaza and its role in Gaza.
Well, Katie, while in the past maybe we required some type of sophisticated analysis of the kind of relationship between Pakistan's rulers and Israel and Zionism, I mean, now you just kind of the statements themselves kind of point to kind of what the direction is, and so I think that people that are now trying to say, well, there is or there isn't. Well, and Pakistan's rulers themselves are saying this so explicitly, and it was quite interesting and perhaps reassuring that if you saw General Sisi, President Sisi of Egypt, he's pretty much agreeing. So let's not just pick on Shabazz Sharif.
Exactly. You're in good company.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think Katie, that was pretty explicit. But of course, rhetorically, I mean, let's be quite frank, I don't even see it rhetorically anymore from these political parties. And so you have a context in which Khan and his movement for justice, Khan would always, specifically speaking about Indian occupation and crimes and atrocities in Kashmir. But what was forgotten is that in the same sentence, he would then speak about Israeli occupation in Palestine and so on. It was always the two would come together. And so, right at this point, and especially during this kind of the genocide in Gaza, okay, well, then people are making connections. I mean, even those Pakistanis that in the past, didn't know much about the Israeli brutality and so on in the occupied territories, the fact that Khan had articulated it and connected it with the situation in Kashmir and increasingly the situation in Pakistan itself has, I think, certainly inspired and educated so many Pakistanis that otherwise wouldn't have, known much about that. And within Pakistan itself, you have groups like the Palestine Solidarity Forum, etc., that have made the linkages now. They have made the linkages, which are clear, right? I mean, this statement of Shabazz Sharif, the way that they have now signed this defense pact with Saudi Arabia, which is obviously an extension of American empire, and also its collaboration with Israel. All of these things have pretty much made it explicit that the current rulers and the dominant political parties, again, the ones that Khan has obviously critiqued most of his life, I mean, they're pretty open about their collaboration and their collusion with Israel and, of course, the Gulf regimes. And that's an important connection that Pakistan has always had that people often miss. The Gulf regimes have always depended on the Pakistani military to defend them, including the Jordanian regime. King Hussein in 1970, the Black September, famous. There was Pakistan's General Zia-ul-Haq sitting there, who was pretty much administering that massacre. And so that's important to remember, that Pakistan has always had this relationship with them and somewhat obedient to them. They have the money, Pakistan has the forces, right? And so we see right now, for example, this the International Stabilization Force, right? I mean, so you've seen obviously Shabazz Sharif endorse Trump's peace plan and obviously wants to now participate in this International Stabilization Force. And one thinks that, okay, now you're willing to send troops. You have the largest army by far in the Muslim majority world, nuclear armed, and you didn't do anything during the peak of the genocide in Gaza over the past 2 years, and now you're willing to send forces there. So, I mean, this is scandalous, Katie. I mean, I don't think you have to be some type of, some serious analyst. Ordinary Pakistanis see through this, and they have at least heard Khan. Whether his movement in the past has been so pro-Palestinian, that's a separate matter. Khan himself clearly has.
Mm.
Yeah.
And what is the diaspora doing? What should the diaspora be doing? But what is the diaspora's view of Khan?
Yeah, and I think this gets to one of the questions that Dr. Moeed Pirzada also tried to address. That is the relationship between the diaspora and Pakistan, and also, part of that story is kind of something that you had gotten to in that previous conversation as well. Is why the silence. Not just of the diaspora, but of Western media, and that includes both all the mainstream legacy media, but also alternative, independent, and progressive media. In terms of the mainstream legacy media, I think that Dr. Prasad made a good point that it's always been the kind of military intelligence apparatus of Pakistan having this cozy relationship with its counterpart in the United States. That's one part of it, but I also think that it's been a and again, this is a generalization, but it's been a very comfortable diaspora as well. This is not to say that we don't have Pakistani, particularly in the United Kingdom, but in the United States, yes, you have them working class Pakistanis here as well. But you certainly have a very comfortable diaspora that's been here. And it must be said, even in terms of the kind of intellectual class, they have been fairly, and it's a massive one. I mean, and they have been fairly well integrated into the universities, think tanks, and so on. And so I think that is kind of the explanation of the more mainstream legacy media. But I think that the more disturbing one has been why progressive, independent, alternative media in the West, in the United States, hasn't been more attentive to this issue. And I think that that's not necessarily their fault. I think that liberals and progressives, Pakistani, unfortunately and tragically, over the past 2-3 years, have not been as vocal as they should have been against the regime change that took place. Khan was considered a nutcase at the beginning for saying that, well, Washington was part of this regime change, and a lot of them bought it, and then a year later, Intercept published the diplomatic cable, which it clearly revealed, in which Washington said to the Pakistan ambassador that, look, I mean, and this was unfortunately after Khan landed in Moscow the day of the Russian military operation in Ukraine. So they said that, we have a problem with Khan's aggressive neutrality. And if you remove him, all will be forgiven. I mean, what can be more explicit than that? People in the State Department denied it for a while. Then they said, well, this is standard diplomatic talk. I mean, I highly doubt that. And so 1 year later on, they kind of had to believe, okay, yes, this was a Washington-backed regime change, but we're still unsure, really, is Khan really that popular? We still question that. Then the elections of 2024 February happened, in which massively rigged against them, Khan sitting in jail, and still they won the majority of parliamentary seats, in which then some of the well-respected members of the Pakistani left then say, okay, it's very clear that Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the movement, controls the street. It's very clear that they're at the forefront of the democratic movement in Pakistan. So it was a slow recognition of what had been transpiring in Pakistan. And I think that, this is unfortunately a problem that we've seen too many examples of in the Muslim majority world. And that is often parties, political tendencies that tend to have some basis in Islam and so on. When when liberals and others, progressives, are unable to compete with them democratically, they become a bit soft on security states intervening to remove them. I mean, take, for example, Katie, Hamas. In 2006, elections that they didn't even want, they win the elections, and this impoverished population has sanctions placed on it. The Gulf regimes, the EU, and obviously Israel and the United States. And so forget about, Hamas governing and people admiring it or not, re-electing them or not. You have the situation in which they're just completely besieged. And of course, the culmination is obviously the genocide there. So it's one example, but you can go through the list in which we sometimes, and I identify myself as someone on the left as well, become a bit soft in terms of when we can't compete democratically and politically, we then in some ways turn a blind eye to what's going on in terms of the security states repressing these movements. Khan's movement is a great example. One cannot deny that anymore, Katie.
And what do you say to Khan's critics who say, oh, he was legitimately arrested for committing fraud, which you'll hear a lot?
Yeah, I mean, well, Katie, now I mean it's fraud, it's terrorism, it's and illegitimate marriage based on. I mean, it's kind of sick and ridiculous the things, the charges. I mean, by this stage, I really doubt you will find people, particularly people, even progressives, that can kind of justify what's been going on against Khan. I mean, we're talking about every time the courts feel pressure to kind of also say that this is ridiculous. The state comes up with 100 more charges against Khan. So by this stage, I like I said, it's become untenable for anyone to argue seriously that Khan is being held. I mean, you have the United Nations interfering, and I think that this is a moment, Katie. I mean, we have kind of been mobilizing, or this is a moment in which it's the Pakistani security state, the generals and the politicians, as seen in that video that you played, kind of like, are embarrassment to Pakistan. And people often say that, well, look, this is, this is kind of symbolic, and why do Pakistanis care about these statements and Khan? Well, I mean, I think any, self-respecting peoples of the global south, yeah, I mean, these things are important as well. Like having some dignity in terms of your country and what it is. When you see these statements like Shehbaz Sharif, and there's another image that I encourage your viewers to see, when both Shehbaz Sharif and, as your previous guest pointed out, this kind of unprecedented move in which the chief of army staff is meeting with Trump in the White House, and he's showing Trump the rare earth minerals, literally showing them that Trump can come in and have a Pakistan. So I think that we have to recognize these are deeply insulting to the population of Pakistan or any society of the global south or anywhere. And I think that clearly, I mean, Khan, whether he wanted to or not, becomes popular precisely because of the political and moral bankruptcy of the rest of the ruling elite.
Right. I want to shift. Oh, actually, tell us about the people in. Tell us about who's in power right now, because Khan isn't.
Well, literally everyone is in power right now because Khan isn't, and by that I mean all of the political parties, right, are colluding with a military regime. And I think that we have reached a point, and one saw that while I acknowledge, as everyone does, that the predominant role that the Pakistani military has played in Pakistani political life historically, you have reached a point in which the fear of Khan and its movement for justice is so much that literally all of the political parties, the one that's has the prime minister in charge, but the president is from the other one. The prime minister, as you mentioned, the Shehbaz Sharif of the House of Sharif family, which has always been largely based in Punjab, and that's why they detest Khan, because he's completely routed them from Punjab. And the other one, the Bhutto Zardari family, which has been based in Sindh, the province of Sindh. Of course, they've kind of obviously won in other parts of the country as well. So you have their person, their guy, Zardari, this corrupt politician. He's the president. Shehbaz Sharif is the prime minister. And of course, we have the recent incarnation, perhaps of one of the most vicious military rulers, Chief of Army Staff Asim Munir, also known as Trump's favorite field marshal, and these guys have no problem with this, right? They wear it as badges when the Pakistani population find this humiliating, which they should, right? And so these are the characters, and it should tell you something. You literally, Katie, have every single power center in the country against him. You had, all the kind of the Gulf regimes, Western countries, Washington's rulers, the United Kingdom, all of them against this one guy and his political tendency. So that should tell people something, whether or not he had this kind of radical left-wing agenda or not. I mean, we can get into the details, but the guy has become immensely popular. The guy is seen as like I said, I don't think he entered this political terrain with that, but he's now seen like a revolutionary hero, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I said, he's only become more and more popular in response to these power centers, and he's exposed them, right? His critique from the very beginning of these political families and their corruption, it's even easier now. The direct collusion of the military that they had supposedly always opposed, or they had need to be signed. I mean, now it's so blatant that you have this moment in which the vast majority of Pakistanis, right, whether in the country and in the diaspora, and I think this is what's happened. Like I said, very comfortable in the past, but it's become so obvious the role in 2022 of the Biden administration in the regime change against a guy that, yes, it should be said, amongst middle classes and working classes has always been immensely popular. And so it's been difficult to conceal that anymore. And this is why you see a diaspora community, again, of all classes, middle classes and working classes, now very, very much trying to do their best in mobilization in support of Khan and the movement for justice.
Right. Well, I wanted to ask you about something else that is actually something that happened today on let's see, December 16th. Let me just find the actual so December 16th is an important day in Pakistan's history, and Brad, we have a headline story to show about this. Tell us what happened on this day regarding Bangladesh.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Katie. I mean, it's obviously a long story, but actually, no, it's pretty straightforward as well. So people will know that in 1947, obviously, the British left the Indian subcontinent wanted independence, and it was partitioned along religious lines. You know, a Hindu majority India and a Muslim majority Pakistan. But the interesting and almost very bizarre thing was that Pakistan had two wings, a western wing and an eastern wing, which obviously would become Bangladesh. And they're separated by 1,000 miles of hostile Indian territory. And the joke was always they're just united by Pakistan International Airlines. But you know, the obviously the common denominator was Islam and the religion, and it's very much kind of a mistake and part of West Pakistani chauvinism to claim that, well, you know, the Bengalis of East Pakistan were insufficiently Muslim, and that's actually totally not the case. That's historically inaccurate. The vast majority of the supporters of the Pakistan movement, you know, countries based on religion, Islam, were actually the ones in East Pakistan. It was very difficult to get all of these characters in West Pakistan, whether the feudals or these other provinces, on board the Pakistan project. What had happened is that, as Punjab has also had with other provinces now, and we kind of warned that, look, this could be another Bangladesh very soon, and whether in Balochistan or in KPK of the Pashtun population, they had this very semi or colonial relationship with East Pakistan, which had the most literate population, politically dynamic population, deliberately underdeveloped by the West Pakistani elite. And so, whether they're cultural, linguistic rights, and just generally like maldevelopment, defunding of their institutions, and so on, that led to genuine grievances in which, you know, the East Pakistanis still wanted to try to make something happen. And the elections and this is kind of how it's relevant, the elections of 1970, in which, just like the elections of 2024, the West Pakistani elites, particularly the military and bureaucratic elites, tried their best to rig the elections against the very popular Awami League in East Pakistan with its very popular leader, Mujibur Rahman, which overwhelmingly won the seats in parliament. And we often talk about Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, very popular prime minister, often the comparisons made with Imran Khan. You know, and we talk about Khan colluding with the military. Bhutto colluded with the mass massacres in order to get to power. And so Bangladesh emerged on this day, December 16th, 1971, in which what they call the fall, the West Pakistanis call the fall of Dhaka, in which the West Pakistani troops surrendered to East Pakistan, and that became Bangladesh. So that's a little bit of that history there.
Yeah, obviously really important, and something that a lot of the West doesn't know about, not surprisingly, but unfortunately. I wanted to ask you, final question. You wrote a piece, Who's Afraid of Naledi Pandor? Brad, I don't know if you have that. If not, I will do a screen share because I just thought about, I just texted you about it, totally last minute. So let's see. Who is afraid of Naledi Pandor? Here it is. Who's afraid of Dr. Naledi Pandor, Zionism, Empire, and the visa revoked in panic? And full disclosure, I'll add this in later, but there's a photo of you and me and Dr. Pandor because we did some speaking engagements together. Tell us about this, about who is indeed afraid of Naledi Pandor.
Well, as I state, it's empire Zionism and beyond that. I think ruling classes throughout the world. This is a person who was obviously who was foreign minister. I mean, now she's retired, foreign minister during the time in which South Africa takes this very brave case against Israel at the International Court of Justice on the charge of genocide, and she led it, very valiantly and like well respected throughout the world. And obviously, we got the privilege of spending some time with her here, which would ultimately be, at least for the time being, her last visit to the United States. Because when she get back, and quite honestly, the way the Trump administration has been behaving on this matter with so many people throughout the world, particularly of the global south, that are even somewhat critical in revoking their visas. I was kind of surprised that she made it to the U.S. for this, and so as soon as she gets back and her visa is revoked, she tells me, and I was like, well, people that don't know what's happened here, it's important to kind of document that. And so I mean, she has been a very vocal critic of the way, obviously, the way Israel has behaved, the U.S. support of that, but also of a lot of Muslim and Arab regimes and their collaboration in this. I mean, she was asked that, when she was bringing this case against Israel at the ICJ, were there a single Muslim country willing to kind of support her, even privately? Nope. And so I wanted to write about it to expose, I mean, not just the obvious culprits in terms of Israel and the United States, but also what I've also written about, I think is kind of the collaborationist Muslim regimes throughout the Muslim world. And she's such an inspiring person when she came, and she really spoke to Muslim communities. And it should be mentioned, and that kind of represents how much of a scandal this has been in terms of the lack of coverage of what's going on in Pakistan. Myself and others had these conversations about Khan, and she vaguely knew. But when she learned more about the details, she kind of mentioned him indirectly in some of the talks. And, she came back for a second visit, which would be her last. And it was amazing how the Pakistanis were like, wow, okay, you're speaking to the hearts of these people. She legitimately, justifiably ridiculed what we just saw, the Pakistani prime minister's performance. And so I think that she has become, and I really want to help educate a lot of people that may have not known, that may have not had that privilege of actually hearing her directly, about what she stood for and continues to stand for in terms of in terms of anti-empire and the ruling elites collaboration throughout the Muslim world, throughout the world, and how in some ways that is very, very visible now in what's going on in Pakistan in terms of Imran Khan's struggle.
Yeah. And we actually have, Brad, I'm just going to send you this very quickly, a short video, and we can actually play more videos on another episode, because Dr. Pandor is very worthy of full, of much more coverage. And I'll see if I can try to get her out, get her to do an interview. I know she doesn't like doing those, but
she, Katie, she asks about you all the time.
Oh,
so
great.
you've made an impression. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, hi, Dr. Pandor, if you're watching. And Mr. Naledi Pandor, her husband. So let's just take a look at this incredibly principled person who, as you just explained, brought the case of genocide against Israel. And here is a short clip of her where she is basically, let me just get this 1 second. 1 second. Sorry, I just have to find. Okay, this is a short clip of her calling on the ICC to issue arrest warrants for Netanyahu and his ministers.
International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over the situation in Palestine. And we have previously called on the Office of the Prosecutor to urgently lead a thorough and impartial investigation into this matter, one that complies with international legal standards, to establish the facts and bring those responsible to justice. If all of this were happening in Africa, they would have already issued warrants. It took 3 weeks to issue warrants on Putin, 7 months, nothing on Prime Minister Netanyahu and his ministers. Of course, you'd have seen in reports today that the prosecutor of the ICC has received, like me, a letter from congressmen who have indicated that if you dare to issue a warrant, we will deal with you. Same letter I have received.
Wow. Well, so much gratitude for brave people like Dr. Pandor and the way that she has brought the lessons of the anti-apartheid fight of South Africa to Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, what she's speaking to is what many of us claim that the ICC is like the International Caucasian Court, International Colonial Court of all it targets is a bunch of, African leaders. And so this is something, a major development within it. But, again, as she's saying, she's receiving the same kind of threatening messages that Karim Khan and others associated with the ICC are also receiving.
Right. Well, Junaid, thank you so much for coming on. Is there any other thoughts you want to share before we're leaving? And again, please come back on the show.
Yeah, Katie, I mean, I think we mentioned December 16th today in terms of what happened in East Pakistan and the independence of Bangladesh. It also should be mentioned that in 2014, there was the horrible massacre of school children in the city of Peshawar. And this is obviously a larger conversation, but it was correctly blamed on the Taliban, who took ownership of it. And they said that, well, you're killing our kids with all these drone attacks and displacement, and therefore we will do this. But it also points to what happened then and today in this distinction that the Pakistani rulers have always made between the good Taliban and the bad Taliban. And what's going on today is those distinctions have collapsed. The supposedly good Taliban, which were supposed to be our proxies and boys in Kabul, they're actually turning out to be bad as well. They're not obeying everything Pakistan says. And so that kind of the myth that both Washington claimed that Islamabad had full control over these guys in Afghanistan, and Islamabad also, like whether they said it publicly or not, Pakistan's rulers also wanted to give an indication, okay, we actually very much control them. That's collapsed, right? I mean, so this distinction of good and bad Taliban, that's collapsed, which they definitely made at that time, 2014, right? I mean, so this was the bad Taliban, the Tehrik-e-Taliban, waging war on the Pakistani state since 2008 for its collaboration with the U.S. war on terror versus the good Taliban that were just carrying out the anti-occupation resistance in Afghanistan. And again, like I said, it's relevant for what happened then is because all of this, the chickens have come home to roost, and you can no longer, the Pakistani rulers find it very difficult now to make that distinction. And therefore, they're undertaking these attacks in Afghanistan, almost like a war. By the way, this was when Trump now is mentioning, Colonel Wilkerson was also saying, what is the Trump saying? He said, let's take Bagram Air Base back. This is coming at the behest of Pakistan's rulers, kind of encouraging him to say these things because they're irate and livid at the way the Taliban guys in Kabul are not really obeying orders.
Right. Well, thank you so much. This is Bucky's thanking you also. This was so great to get more information on this. And again, we will be doing a stream with one of Imran Khan's sisters Thursday, right here, youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. Junaid Ahmed, please come back on the show and thank you for all that you do.
Absolutely, Katie. Thank you for all that you do. Thanks so much.
You. Okay, that's Bucky barking in the background, but don't go anywhere because we have our final segment of tonight, and Bucky's very, very excited, as you can see. Actually, after this segment, we will do another one. It's going to be a tribute to someone who we lost recently, very tragically. I would really wish I wasn't going to be doing that segment, but we will be doing that. That will be our final segment. But this is our final segment with guests, and we are so excited to bring these two guests on. One of them has been on the show before, filmmaker Tammy Gold, who is a multidisciplinary artist, cultural worker, and professor at Hunter College, CUNY, although she did recently retire. And as a filmmaker, she has produced films like RFK and the Land of Apartheid, Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, Labor Struggle in the Post Office, The Last Hunger Strike, Ireland, 1981. She's won awards like the GLAAD Media Award, AFI Independent Filmmakers Award, Museum of Television and Radio, very impressive. And we are also bringing onto the show, making her Katie Halper Show debut, JT Takagi, who is an award-winning independent filmmaker and sound recordist. Her films are primarily on Asian American, and immigrant issues and include Bittersweet Survival, The Number 7 Train, The Women Outside, and North Korea Beyond the DMZ, which all aired on PBS. And she is also worked as a sound engineer on Emmy documentaries with Emmy and Cinema Audio Society nominations, including the 2018 Oscar-nominated Emmy-winning Strong Island by Yance Ford, Black Panther's Vanguard of the Revolution, and Tell Them We Are Rising by Stanley Nelson. And she manages Third World Newsreel, a nonprofit alternative media center, and serves on the boards of both community and national organizations working on peace and justice. So without further ado, we are going to bring on Tammy and JT to talk about Third World Newsreel. Welcome. Hi, how are you?
How are you doing? Thanks for having us.
Of course. So you're joining us actually right now, and I will add your name as well, JT. But you are joining us from the Maisels Cinema. Tell us about the cinema. Tell us about why you're there, and tell us about Third World Newsreel.
All right, we're here because tonight we're showing several films from the Newsreel collection. And it's tonight and tomorrow night as well. So we hope people will come out to see it. But Maisels is the only documentary film center in Upper Manhattan and in Harlem. And Newsreel is an organization that Tammy belonged to originally, that formed in 1967-68, and was responsible as a radical film collective for making dozens of films that captured the social movements of that time period, ranging from the Young Lords to the Black Panthers to workers' movements to women's movement. And all these films we have recently digitally preserved. And that was through Third World Newsreel, which is the descendant of Newsreel. As of 1972, Newsreel became Third World Newsreel, emphasizing media buying about people of color and social justice issues, and has been women-led, BIPOC people-led since that time. And what we do is educational distribution, some production, a lot of training. We run workshops, and we have a production workshop that trains up to 10 people a year for the last 49 years in making films. And we've been doing more recently preservation, since so many of our films are from that period, 67 to 72, that are going into disrepair. And so we want to preserve them for future generations. And what we're trying to do right now is make it possible for people to see now how people were organizing then, and hopefully inspire people to see that work still needs to be done, and it can be done if people work together. So,
can you guys move back? I'm sorry, we in our sound check you a little bit more, because basically it's kind of annoying, but there is a vertical setting, and right now we can only see your shoulders, the people who are watching on cell phones. So move back, keep going.
Both of us?
Yeah, both of you, please. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You just need to.
Is it looking better this way?
You do. Go lean in a little towards your right, Tammy, and JT a little to your left.
Okay.
Okay.
We are sitting on the floor.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, very dedicated.
Wow, you really are.
We're sitting on the floor in the basement of the cinema.
Well, Katie.
Brad, you froze.
Or you might appreciate this.
You froze, so you have to say what you're saying again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was just going to say that I think it's kind of pros and cons. JT, being a sound recordist, might appreciate this, that you're in a really reverberant space right now. And so the further you move back, the worse that's going to become with how you're sounding. And you probably have to move back quite a ways to get into the vertical, or like one of you will have to sit on the other's lap.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
So.
But Tammy looks like she's a movie star, like leaning on one side.
I personally, I think that for now, hopefully the audience watching Vertical would understand.
Yeah,
and
yeah, sure.
I
You're
would,
saying people are
Just
going to watch
tolerate.
it.
I think that
Yeah.
we should just prioritize moving forward and sounding the
this
best
look
you
better?
can. And
You look great, Tammy, and JT, move a little bit to your left. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, when you talk, just one of you can
Tilt
just
over.
tilt over. Exactly. Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
all happening live?
Oh yeah, this is live. Yeah.
I meant you were discussing that we're
Oh yeah,
sitting
yeah,
on
yeah,
the floor.
yeah.
Okay, but
I'm
you know
being
what
too
Maisels
responsive
is
to the
called?
what?
A people's living room in Harlem.
There
So
you
it's
go.
appropriate that we're
It
sitting on
is.
the floor.
Yeah,
on
that is
pillows
appropriate.
like this.
Oh wow, that is
Awesome.
appropriate. Yeah. Well, we're going to yeah, this is people who are watching Vertical, just be patient and know that we are very blessed to have these women joining us from where they are. And so tell us, Tammy, about your film that you made with Third World Newsreel. But I also want to say something, which is that Third World Newsreel, which is a bit of a tongue twister, which used to be Newsreel, was something that our great friend Renee Lichtman, who we interviewed for this documentary that we're working on Holocaust survivors speaking out against genocide, he was one of the founders of Newsreel Cinema, which then, of course, turned into Third World Newsreel. So that's a really nice connection. So we're going to play some trailers of some of the films that Newsreel put out, and that will be either screened tomorrow or will already have been screened. And the first one that we are going to show is actually Revolution Until Victory, which is about Palestine. And that's like the perfect transition. And then we'll show your film, Tammy. But given how much our show focuses on Palestine, I think that's the best one to start off with. Is there anything you guys want to say about this documentary, which was made in 1972?
I think it's fantastic. It's one of the few documentaries that really talks about the history of Zionism way before the occupation of Palestine.
Right.
So I think that's what makes it unique.
Okay. Yeah, it's very important. Okay. So let's take a look at this first film, Revolution Until Victory, from 1972.
Do you see how they see us old?
We are the Palestinian people. We have lived on our land, our Palestine, for thousands of years. Now we are almost all refugees. Someday we will return.
The Palestinian people rose in revolt to protest these imperialist schemes on their homeland.
The Palestinian Revolution was born in our refugee camps, where the poor, the hungry, and the landless survived. We are the Palestinians. The land is Palestinian. The problem is Palestinian, and the people are Palestinians. So only we can find a solution.
Okay. So, and that has bin restored. Is that correct?
Digitally preserved.
Digitally preserved. Okay, great. And Tammy, were you involved in Third World News, or I guess Newsreel at this point still? Were you involved with this collective when that was made?
That was made, it was not made in New York, and I was in the New York collective. So no, I wasn't involved.
Okay, but you were part of the collective when that film was made, is what I meant. Like you were part of Newsreel.
1973.
In 1973, yes.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, just so that the audience knows, after New York Newsreel was the first group to form, and when shortly thereafter, chapters formed all around the country. So there was a Boston Newsreel, Detroit one, San Francisco one, and it was members of the San Francisco Newsreel who made the Palestinian film.
Okay, the San Francisco one. Great. Wow, great. And they actually went there? They went to Palestine to make it? Wow.
It's been several months.
Wow. And do you remember how this film was received at all, Tammy? I mean, this was very ahead of its time, right? In terms of
it was very ahead of its time, and pretty much most of the work that was done in Newsreel, the collective, was ahead of its time. So it didn't stand out at that point that it was anything like ahead of its time, or it was kind of like even talking about imperialism in Central and Latin America was not common at the time.
Right. Well, speaking of which, that's a great transition to My Country Occupied, which you made, Tammy. So why don't we take a look at this trailer and then you can tell us more about this film. But anything you want to tell us before we watch the trailer?
We didn't know what we were doing when we went to Latin America. We just had a camera, a Bolex, a very $17 recorder for sound, and we hitchhiked to Guatemala.
Wow. Okay. So let's take a look.
My name, Oaxaca de Mejia. I am Guatemalan, my country occupied. We only have to drop the seeds and everything grows. But this land has been robbed from us. My home, a united fruit plantation. We packed them to be sent to the United States, away from our hungry people. The priest and landlord kept telling us that we were living in sin.
Misery, sickness, and pain are God's punishments for your sins.
We were all angry about these things. She said that people all over Guatemala would no longer let the company steal their land. My name, Oaxaca de Mejia. My country, Guatemala. I am a guerrilla.
Guerrillero, guerrillera, en la calle, en la selva.
Wow. So tell us about making that, Tammy. And by the way, you're fine. You can sit whichever way is most comfortable. We're going to prioritize the way you look in the horizontal one, so don't worry about. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay. So tell us about that film.
Well, the film, I had made a lot of photographs in South America and Central America. And when I got back to the United States, people were saying that it was fantastic and our presentation was really strong, but they wanted to see it as a film. And we were able to get a very small grant then. I mean, $2,000 then felt like $100,000. So we just bought a very cheap Bolex camera. We had no idea what we were going to do. We just wanted to really share what we had witnessed. And we decided to tell the story through the voice of one woman so that it becomes as personalized as it could be. We did not have sync sound. It was a bit of a problem we did not know. I was 21, so I didn't know that you needed a certain kind of recorder. And here we talk about sound again. I needed JT with me, but at that point, JT, probably you weren't born then. So we didn't have, at the end of the day, when we got back into the United States, we didn't have the right kind of sound. So we had to do a lot of recreation. But the objective of the film was really to look at U.S. imperialism and that it dominates everything from the economy to civil rights to human rights. And so it's through the story of one woman, Oaxaca de Mejia. So it's a combination of people. So we were able to make like a composite of a lot of the different people we met. And so that gives you a little background into the film. It was like a crazy experience. And I was nurtured in newsreel. You know, a lot of people say that they're not formally educated or trained as filmmakers or as anything. And I can't really say that because I feel like newsreel was my college. Newsreel was who trained me and educated me, both as a critical thinker, my politics, and also how to make films, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
I've been making films ever since.
And was this kind of mixed genre? Because it sounds like you're saying that you combine many characters into one. So this was somewhat narrative?
Yes, basically it's a docudrama.
Got it.
And it's constructed. There's no sync sound except for one newscaster, not really an educator. And so it's really a compilation. It comes out the style of the cinema movement in Latin America, which was really this kind of intense, nitty-gritty movement of social justice films, but really on the ground. So it comes out of
you guys now sitting on the ground. It's again appropriate.
So it comes out of that spirit of, and then it was very influenced by a Cuban filmmaker, Santiago Alvarez, because his work is a complete composite of different things. Nina Simone singing as we see Vietnam. So he really took it to a different level. And basically, it comes out of the tradition of urgent filmmaking, which is newsreels, like how newsreels were done and shown in movie theaters. But there's this kind of underlying urgency that drives it. And that really is Santiago's, he's known for that, and has been a kind of international educator around that notion of urgent filmmaking.
I would say that also was the whole basis of newsreel's existence, right? Was to counter mainstream media, of which at that time there was only several broadcast channels. There was no internet. There was no other way for people to get other information about what was going on. And newsreel wanted to make short, to the point films about what was really happening.
Wow. Well, we have one more clip to show, one more trailer to show. And this film is People's War, it's called, and it's about Vietnam. So anything you want to say before we watch this one?
No.
Speaks for itself, right? Okay.
Do you think I should go upstairs now? It sounds like it's over. You just deal with the rest.
They try to destroy everything in a village. They want that nobody can live in that village.
What we want is simple, a better life for all our people.
But so long as U.S. troops and the Saigon administration remain, genuinely free and democratic elections will be impossible. Therefore, the Vietnamese people demand the withdrawal of all U.S. troops and their satellites. A total, complete, unconditional withdrawal.
We keep complete records in order to forget nothing. We want to remember not only our suffering, but also our hatred and our victories. We record the date of each raid, the names of everyone injured and the extent of their injuries. In our houses of tradition, we keep photographs, a part of each plane downed, equipment of the captured pilots, the weapons that were used against us and the weapons that we used to defend ourselves. We keep our awards there and all the things that will remind us of our daily struggle.
Wow. Okay, let me unmute you. Or do you have them, Brad? Okay, I got unmute. So, all right. Well, Tammy, we all heard Tammy. It's funny because I think she thinks that the audio goes away when we start playing stuff, but we heard her. She had to go upstairs. You're handling the holding the fort. That was really quite shocking audio. I mean, content. You know, hearing that. This was obviously Vietnam was a really galvanizing time and war for many people, and it really radicalized a lot of people. So, what are your thoughts on this film, the role of Vietnam in filmmaking, and then tell us about what Newsreel is working on today?
All right, in terms of the role, I think one of the things that helped Newsreel to get out its films is that because it was doing radical films, it was also able to make connections to groups like in Vietnam, in Cuba, in Korea, and China at a time when you couldn't see any of this material. And so they were able to go on delegations and actually film there, exchange prints with people there, which is why you'll see films from Newsreel in those countries as well, and then bring back not only films that they made in Vietnam, but they brought back films from Vietnam to be able to show. And one thing that people would do is they would go out and show it. And at that time, it's 16 millimeter film. So they'd have to go with a projector and a reel of film and show it, or they'd ship it, the print, to places so that people could show it. And it was also a rule in most of the Newsreel chapters that someone had to go out and talk about the film and give context to what was being seen.
Great.
So, and I'd say the spirit of that is what continues at Newsreel, at Third World Newsreel. We do some production, but now it costs a lot more to make films. So when we can raise funds for grants, then we make films. But we do a lot of educational distribution, exhibition, and a lot of training of the next generation of conscientized filmmakers.
What did you call them? What filmmakers?
Conscientized.
Oh, conscientized. Okay, I like that term. And tell us about your own filmmaking. I'm particularly curious about your Korea film.
All right. Well, actually, it's one of a couple films that we've made on the Korean Peninsula. I do a lot of work around Korea peace issues and things like that. And we were able, on 2 occasions for 2 films, to actually get permission to go into North Korea. And the first one was called Homes Apart Korea, and that I made with Christine Choi, who was a co-founder of Third World Newsreel, who recently just passed away.
Sorry.
But we were probably the first American-based crew to be allowed to both North and South. And that was the core story of that film, was the millions of families that were separated by the division of Korea, which the U.S. divided Korea, and with the subsequent changes in both those countries, but the remaining fact that the division has not helped things for anybody, and certainly not for the 10 million families that were separated by that.
Wow.
So we filmed then, and then I went later again with Hijam Park, and we did the film called North Korea Beyond the DMZ, and that was to look at North Korea around the time right after they had gotten over what they call the arduous march, which was the famine and disasters that really hit them badly. And we look at ordinary people and also how they perceive what the situation is between the U.S. and Korea.
Wow. Well, I was going to ask Tammy about her film about sex work, but I guess she had to take off. But I would love to have you guys back on, because this is really fascinating stuff, and also to talk more about your films.
That'd be great. And also, we'd like to tell people that tomorrow we're showing more films at Maisels, and that program is called Mutual Aid. And the films that we're showing are Childcare, People's Liberation, A Meat Cooperative, People's Firehouse #1, and Fresh Seeds in the Big Apple. And at least 2 of those films are preserved, and 2 more. The other 2 are going to be preserved in the next half year. So,
Wow.
But they're all really interesting, and it's all, again, shows people organizing in order to get the things they need. And 2 of the films, specifically childcare, which is, big issue all around.
Yeah.
And another one's where people decide that they should form a cooperative to buy and sell meat, since it was not possible to get a decent cut of meat at a decent price at all. And
Yeah.
on the lower side, a group formed in order to make that happen.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's great. I saw the trailers for that, and I will put a link in the description. In fact, Brad, I just texted it to you so that people can click on it right away and find information about this. There you go. Newsreel Mutual Aid, a film program. And the screening is December 17th at 7 p.m. General admission, $15, reduced price $7. And that is in at 343 Malcolm X Boulevard in Manhattan. So thank you so much. And yeah. And where can people watch these films if they are not in New York City?
Well, some of them are available through the New York Public Library, actually.
Oh, great.
Because they own a bunch of our films. And the others are mostly available through academic, like Alexander Street Press and things like that. But we also, and people reach out to us because we're trying to get these preserved films out and seen. So we're happy to work with community groups and whatever in order to be able to show them.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye. All right. So that was great. And now we have something that I really would rather not be covering. And Brad, I just want to make sure you have the right one. It starts with a tweet that has a screenshot, right?
I will get that. I believe I have that.
It's all, I put everything in one tweet.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want, I can show it, but let me actually just send it to you just to make sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, but yeah, it says everything in one tweet. I think what happened is that putting the screen grabs was not conducive to making it legible for you. Okay, there it is. So I just did it. So never again with screen grabs. Okay. Okay, so people, I'll just start and then Brad will let me just know when you have it, Brad, okay? So I'm not like So people know that Leslie Lee passed away last month, and then earlier this month, Assad Haider passed away. Okay, sorry. Okay, so let's just play or show. Brad, can you read what I wrote? I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I can.
So you can just read the screenshots.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. And
Would you like me to show that on screen
yeah,
or
yeah.
just read it?
No, you can
Okay.
just play just read the Twitter thread.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So, Katie had written, Assad had such an incredible intellectual life, but he was also.
Oh, wait, sorry,
just,
not to intervene. Are you going to play? Do you want? I can actually play after that. I can actually play it if you want from my thing, and I just minimize.
Because I now have all of this.
Okay, great.
Is this what?
Yeah, so
you
you can just like, why don't you just literally click on it?
Oh, you want me to read like
Yeah,
the text that's
exactly.
on the
Yeah.
Oh,
I can maybe I can do it now. No,
Okay.
I probably can't.
well, it's entirely up to you.
Nah, I won't be able to. So you can do it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to show it on screen as I read it as well?
Yeah. So you can read what I wrote, and then you can show the screenshot. Yeah.
And sorry to be so, I don't know.
I'll do it. Let me
like,
try to do it.
dense about it, but
Yeah.
when you say read what you wrote,
Yeah.
you
Like
mean
you see the tweet. Yeah. Yeah.
you mean the text that you wrote in
Exactly
the
right.
post.
Yeah. Yes. So
Right.
I can try to do it if you play it for me.
And by play it,
Click through
I'm
the
such
tweet.
an idiot.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll probably have to cut this out because it's too yeah. I'll just let me just say Assad Haider, we will let me play it. Let me see if I can play it. Sorry about this. Okay, so Assad Haider was a really brilliant political theorist. We'd had him on the show. He wrote an amazing book called Mistaken Identity. And let's see. I'm actually going to just play. Let me just put this in. That's, I think, the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to do stop screen, share screen. Let me just put this in the window. Okay. Okay, I think this will work. Okay, share screen. Okay. So I just wanted to tell people about Assad. Kind of like I did with Leslie Lee, we will absolutely be doing a longer program on Assad because like Leslie, he left an incredible legacy. Different, but incredible nonetheless. He was a scholar. And he founded Viewpoint Magazine, co-founded it. He wrote this book, Mistaken Identities. So I'll just read what I had tweeted. I put this together for this. So Assad had such an incredible intellectual life, but he was also just such an amazing person. More to come, but just some highlights from a life well lived. And as he wrote, all our biographies are unfinished and will remain so long after we are gone. And he wrote that in an essay about Stuart Hall. Okay, so and I just thought this was a nice part because people really know him as this intellectual, which he was, but he was also an amazing teacher. So this is from his obituary. Like his father, who was a professor of architecture at Penn State for decades, Assad considered teaching his highest calling. He cultivated an egalitarian classroom where ideas were arrived at through dialogue and believed he had a duty of care to the young minds in his charge. I'm not going to be able to read that whole thing because it'll just make me too upset. But Brad, this is what I meant, by the way, when I was talking about how to play it like that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All our biographies are unfinished. Assad wrote in a 2021 essay on Stuart Hall and will remain so long after we are gone because of the ripple effect he created through his brilliant writing, through his impassioned teaching, and through his loyalty to his friends and family. Assad's biography is still being written. So here is Assad and his brother Shuja Haider, who is a big friend of the show. He's been on the show a lot, and we love Shuja. So Assad studied, they both went to Cornell, and Assad studied political science, and then Shuja studied literature. So they kind of went in those different intellectual routes. Here is Assad he got his PhD in the history of consciousness. Wait, why can't I see what I wrote? I want to write. Okay. So this is with his brother Shuja and their friend Gavin Arnal at Marx's grave in 2007. Here is Assad. You can see him in the. Can you see what I'm putting my?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Assad there in 2014 at UC Santa Cruz, where Assad did his PhD in the history of consciousness program. Students walked out of their classes to protest the recent tuition hike approval. Here is his extremely influential book, Mistaken Identity, published by Verso. By the way, that happened to have a different, they changed the subtitle. So first it was Mistaken Identity, Race and Class in the Age of Trump. And then it was released as Mistaken Identity, Mass Movements and Racial Ideology. Here is Assad at the launch of the Portuguese translation of his book at the Festa Literaria Internacional de Paraty. Sorry, I don't speak Portuguese. There he is on that same panel, but he really looks like such a rock star here.
Yeah.
Very handsome. I love that his obituary the photo in the obituary doesn't quite capture how handsome he was, but it's a very good photo, and he looks very, very happy. Okay, here's a panel that I was on, actually. It was at his book launch at Verso Books in Brooklyn. And here is going from left to right, Robin Marasco, Wendell H. Marsh, Assad in the middle, Brianna Joy Gray, and me. And you can see there's the same panel. And you're going to see Assad making some very, animated gestures. Here he is smiling. And this is a very Assad-like gesture where he's, gesticulating with his hands. Now, I mentioned Shuja. Shuja is Assad's brother. And this is a great tweet from Shuja. Both of them really good posters. It must be genetic. So here's what Shuja wrote. Oops, crap. Oh, my God. Wait, sorry. Am I still in this? Can you see it? Okay. Shuja wrote, seems like a great pic of the panel at Assad's book launch at first, until you realize my ass is hovering above them like a mighty god. So there you go. You can see it. That's his ass. Yeah. Okay, that's Robin, Wendell, Assad, Brianna, and me. And that's Shuja's tweet. And then here is, let's see, I'll play the sound here. Here is, Brad, you can just play this because it's hard for me to set it up and play it. But the next thing is a video. I used to do these interviews for TYT, the Young Turks. And one of the first people I interviewed was Assad Haider. So you're about to see like an outtake of an interview I did with Assad. And again, this is not a deep analysis of his work, because there's a lot of that. And I'll at some point play the interview that we did. And there's tons of footage of him and his writings. And someone actually will put a link to this. Someone did an Excel sheet of collecting all of his writings that aren't at Viewpoint magazine, which he co-founded. So here is just a little funny moment because I met Assad through Shuja. Haha, all hail Ask God. So yeah, I met Assad through Shuja Ask God Haider. And this is like a little behind the scenes thing, but they have very different accents. Like the way they talk is very different from each other. Because both of their parents were from Pakistan. And so they kind of just didn't sound like either their parents, if that makes sense. So, but Shuja, I would always joke that he sounds Jewish because, and I would, I once had him on my show and he said the title of the piece, and I was laughing. Anyway, so in this little video, here you're going to see an outtake during this interview, and then Assad, and then I start laughing at him because he sounds like Shuja to me in the way he says it. Okay.
Sound is speeding.
Can you talk about your own politicization?
Again,
You just sound like Shuja. Well, I thought, because I don't know where we stopped, so.
I talked to.
And then, okay, he has an amazing laugh, which that's not totally captured there. But this next clip, again, is him and Shuja. And this is amazing because they showed up to an event wearing the same exact outfit without having planned it. So here it is.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that same night, I just wanted to show, there's one more tweet, I think, underneath there, if you see it. And so, no.
Well, now you're back in control, Katie.
Oh, got it. I'm in control. Okay, let's see. Got it. Okay. So here's just a nice photo from that same night. As you can see, Assad and Shuja are wearing the same outfits.
Wow.
And that is with Wendell, their friend. And yeah. So just a nice smiling photo of Assad with Shuja. And we will be honoring Assad. There's like no shortage of ways to do that through, well, you know, I'm sure we're going to do a presentation about Assad, but you can get his book, Mistaken Identity. You can read his pieces. You can watch his videos. And he was on during the pandemic also. So we did a virtual interview, I believe twice. Yeah. So we miss you, Assad. You do live on in your countless articles. I just count myself, like with Leslie Lee, I mean, it's really beautiful to see this outpouring of support and grief and gratitude for Leslie and Assad. But, you know, those of us who knew them personally have the extra kind of pain of that loss on a personal level, but we also have the extra joy of having gotten to know them in person. So that is a little totally disorganized because I wasn't totally prepared emotionally for that. Like preview into the life of Assad Haider, which again, we will be covering much more in later dates. Thank you everyone for watching the show. Thank you so much, Brad, for helping as always, but especially during this part. Thank you, Nate, for the research. Thank you, Andrew, for the podcasts and clips. Thank you to all the guests. We will be releasing part of this as Patreon. So if you want to see the full interview with Lawrence Wilkerson, you can do that at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Please like, please subscribe. Those are free ways to support the show. And we will put links to Third World Newsreel in the description. And we'll also put links to Assad's obituary and writings. And I think that's all. And everyone be well and hug your friends and your pets if you have them. And tell people how much you appreciate them. Because as we learned with Leslie and Assad, life can be really short. So we have to be here for each other. And also, please do support a free Palestine, because that is something that both Leslie and Assad cared a lot about. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man.